and unfamiliar. The shape of its tune, its sound, and its sheer bewildering complexity.
Strawberry fields forever.
The chief weapon in their musical counter-revolution was a stunning roll call of sublime melodies that perhaps only Mozart can match in European musical history. It's no accident that Yesterday is the most recorded song of all time. It is that good. But they weren't just about catchy tunes.
To appreciate fully what the Beatles did to music, we need to look at the basic building blocks of all music, melody, rhythm and harmony, and to see why it is that Western music sounds so different to the music of other cultures. A piece of Western music is instantly recognized as such because its tune is constructed from a series of notes which belong to families of notes called keys. Think of them as a palette of available colors, if you like. Since the list of available colours is in fact fairly restricted, these notes arrange themselves time and time again into familiar and attractive patterns, which composers over the centuries have discovered work well. Until the 20th century, that is, when classical composers decided to dismantle this system of agreed note patterns altogether, deliberately. They were fed up with tunes sounding predictable and familiar and thought it best to destroy the old note system completely. One result of this movement is that for the first time in history, a huge gulf opened up between music lovers and music, because audiences couldn't identify in any way with the new sound. Popular music, on the other hand, stuck to the old note system with a vengeance. Classical and popular music were drifting further and further apart, but worse was to come.
Classical composers in the 1950s and 60s decided to abandon not just the note system, but every other recognizable feature of Western music, declaring that any sound, such as the rubbing of sandpaper, could be described as music. All of the activities you see here were put on as actual musical performances, no kidding. But it wasn't as if there was no method at all in this madness. Often the only way to see or hear things afresh is to do away with the old and traditional. But audiences, in their masses, didn't get the new sounds and concepts. They held on stubbornly to the familiar inherited forms. For their part, the musical avant-garde celebrated their unpopularity. A dreadful impasse emerged. Classical music as a living, communicative language had, to all intents and purposes, ground to a halt. So by the time the Beatles arrived on the scene, practically the only new music anyone wanted to listen to was popular music.
Well, if you feel it and like it, go get your lover, then reel and rock it, roll it over.
But pop music in the 1950s, whilst often catchy, had its limitations too. It was formulaic, recycling the same few chords, song structures and rhythms again and again. Nothing that precedes the Beatles gives any clue as to the startling transformation they were about to set in motion.